Welcome back to another episode of Mando Chat. I'm here with Ben. Ben, how you doing?
I'm good, Stefano. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So what did you think of this episode? You did
Uh,
send me a message after before I watched it. So I was kind of interested to see where it would go. I wasn't expecting that direction, but how about you?
yeah, this is another one. This is the second time this season that I've watched an episode twice. Uh and it wasn't because I loved it so much. I just had to revisit it um to see if my dislike was really warranted. And with the third episode that I rewatched the second time, it did improve. This one for me did not. This felt like a very strange episode. It felt like I was watching like Law and Order Special Droids Unit or something. It was yeah, not a fan of this one.
Something interesting happened in the episode where when they got to the point where they got to the droid bar, um and that was the kind of like that turning point for me in the episode. But I understand the logic behind it, because if in the Star Wars universe, droids basically have their own personality and they're able to communicate with each other. So if you obviously see the relationship between like R2D2 and C3PO, they have full out conversations and they have a full relationship. Taking that to an absolute extreme means all these droids have these relationships. So seeing them all interact in this bar was an interesting scene. It was pretty funny. I got a kick out of it, but I wasn't the episode that I was expecting. It was one of those things again, the side quest. We're here for this specific mission, no problem. But first, do this for me.
Yeah, they even like when they're flying into the planet, they see her old fleet and they're like, "That's where we need to go." And it's like, oh wait, but wait, no, we're not gonna go there for a half an hour. We got to do all this side stuff first. Which I mean, I'm not surprised by it at this point. Like the show has its formula for these types of episodes. So when they did see the fleet, and then you see them get sidetracked and kind of pulled into like their ship gets autopiloted. You know, at that point, I was just like, okay, here we go. I know what's happening now. I know what to expect. Even though I didn't, it was just a much stranger episode than I expected. But I knew the formula. I knew what we were gonna get was, you know, three-quarters of the episode was gonna be a side story. They were gonna bookend it with where they picked up at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are some positives to the episode. Plaisir 15 was a really cool looking planet. Obviously they incorporated those few elements, like you said, the autopiloting, the transportation. This is all like really high end future technology that exists within Star Wars, but it gave them zero ability to maneuver on their own. And they went straight to the main temple to see the Duchess, and obviously we're given this mission. The another story element that it seems to be crossing over episode to episode is the rehabilitation,
Yes.
and right. So we do hear again that a lot of people within Plaisir 15 have been rehabilitated, as well as the droids, and that's the reason for the episode. So in that regard, they managed to tie in the episode to the overall story arc.
I think there's like, well, you kind of hinted at it when you're talking about the bar scene. I do think there's something really interesting to be said about the droids having their own personalities. And there is the one bartender droid says like, we don't want any trouble. Like we're worried about if these droids are causing this trouble, we're going to be decommissioned or repurposed again, and like we enjoy our lives here. I do think there's an interesting story there. I just think that the way they went about this episode, like it felt to me like a procedural police drama. Like it felt like a CSI or a Law and Order, right down to the story beats. They've even got the one scene where they're looking at like the bloods. They go to the droid morgue and they're looking at like the blood sample. Like, what am I watching? It's just yeah, totally strange. But I do think there's some interesting stuff there, and I did like them calling back to the New Republic, because every time they do it since that third episode, it adds a little bit more weight and meaning to that what seemed like a one-off story in episode 3. So there is a little bit more to that now, which I do appreciate.
Yeah. It did also make me remember an element of a story plot element that they introduced in the first 2 episodes with IG-11, and I thought that's where they were kind of going with it, because IG-11, Din wanted to repurpose him and bring him back to reformatted state, and they were saying, hey, if you try to do this, you may get a IG-11 that's back to if you reformat him, he may revert back to its original state, which Din knew this going into this planet when he heard about these droids. So he knew that they were not reliable in that way. So that I thought that's the direction that they were going into, and I thought it would tie back to the IG-11 in some way, but it didn't. It ended up being an old chancellor, I think he was named, who is obviously Christopher Lloyd, being like the man responsible for the issues with the droids. So it ended up going in a different direction, which I was interested. I was so curious as to why they went that way with it, considering they introduced the IG-11 story arc in the beginning for over 2 episodes and it went nowhere.
Yeah. On that note of guest appearances, we got we got some big ones this episode. I'm surprised I didn't have it spoiled for me. I don't know if you did before you watched, but like it completely took me by surprise, and not just one, big guest star, but you've got 3 in this episode. Obviously, you got Christopher Lloyd, but then you've got Jack Black and Lizzo, which just caught me so off guard. Yeah.
They were big guest stars, absolutely. And as soon as that door opened up and you saw Jack Black with his like very exaggerated energy on screen, it definitely took me by surprise. And the actors, like, again, Jack Black, he's one of those actors that overpowers a scene with his energy. So yes, to throw him in there again, I think a lot of people were taken back by the guest star. Honestly, they both could have been anybody, based on the story arc that they gave Christopher Lloyd. It makes much more sense that it was an older man in that role. So Christopher Lloyd does fit the character to be a much older man, because he gave away that he is actually a separatist and he believed in Count Dooku morals. So in that regard, he would be a very old man, in even in the Star Wars era. So he's the only one out of the 3 that kind of fit the role. The other 2, Lizzo and Jack Black, they really could have been anybody. They didn't have to be the big actors that they are.
Yeah, this felt like guest stars for the sake of having guest stars. It's like when back in the heyday of network TV, when they used to have like Sweeps Week and they'd bring in all these special guest stars and stuff on your favorite shows. This feels like that, and it's like it doesn't need that. I don't see anybody, is this really going to bring in more of an audience? Like, oh, I'm not, I've never watched The Mandalorian. Oh, well, you know what? We've got Jack Black and Lizzo and Christopher Lloyd on this episode. And it's like, hot damn, I'm going to watch it now. It's kind of distracting. And Lucas, George Lucas in the past, going back to the original trilogy, he spoke about, how he wanted to cast like relatively unknown actors, so you're not distracted by this big celebrity presence. And it was the opposite here. Like, I love Jack Black. He's funny. I thought Lizzo, like, acting wise, like, she did a pretty good job. but I was always distracted and aware that I was watching Jack Black and Lizzo in guest roles. They didn't feel like they fit naturally within this world, even though it was this, this lavish planet. They did play those like higher ups quite well. It was very distracting.
It was, and going back, like you said, to the history of Star Wars, at least on screen, on the big screen, it the movies, the 9 movies, do have a history of casting relatively unknown actors to play these characters and make them, and they end up becoming massive stars after. Even in the episode 1 to 3, the biggest actor in that time period, in those films, were Samuel L. Jackson, Liam Neeson. Really, that's it. Otherwise, Ewan McGregor was a relatively, not, I wouldn't call him unknown, but he's not the actor he is today. Now you
No.
see him, right? And, even in the new trilogy, all of the actors in the new series, they're big actors now because of Star Wars, not the other way around.
No, exactly. Like they've done stuff. I'd seen some of their previous work, but they weren't household names until Star Wars. This is like, this episode, you say Jack Black, everybody knows who Jack Black is.
On a positive, the the end 10-ish minutes of the episode was really the part of the episode that we were most interested to see develop, which was Bo and Din, on their actual mission to go find Mandalorians. And based on the conversation we had last week with them not really introducing that many new characters, episode to episode, we've just been playing around with the same characters over the last 3 years. It makes sense that they would just revert back to, let's find the Mandalorians that I worked with and start from there, at least. So they go back and they find the Mandalorians that Bo-Katan was a leader of, and she fights for the lead of the squadron. So this was the part of the episode that we knew that Dallas Bryce Howard would be able to do, which is the battle between the two of them. Did you enjoy the battle?
Yeah, it was. It was expected. I knew there was going to be kind of a brawl when they walk in there.
Wolves,
Axe Wolves. When he kind of puts on the tough guy persona, he's like, I'm in charge now. You're not getting this back. I knew a brawl was coming. It was quite well shot. Honestly, like the direction of the episode as a whole, even though I didn't like the episode, it was well directed. I know last week when we had our conversation, I said, this is going to be a well directed episode. I was expecting it to be a great episode too. I was half right. But yeah, that brawl was well shot. There's the scene where they're on the wing of one of the ships and he throws her down and she grapples up and pulls him down. That was great. That was a cool moment.
Yeah. The big reveal at the end of the episode gives more weight to one of your favorite episode, which is episode 2. Episode 2 is when they go to Mandalore and there's the battle where Bo-Katan has to come back and save Din from being captured, and that adds more. The conversation that takes place adds more weight to that story element, because I think a lot of people sidestep the fact that Din lost the Darksaber in that battle, and Bo-Katan used it to defeat the captor.
Yeah, and I did like the way that Din kind of passes it to her by technicality. I mean, I know that's not the official rules. I mean, you're supposed to win it in battle, but technically speaking, he was defeated by this creature in the second episode, and then she defeated that creature. So she won it from that creature in battle. So, I mean, technically it belongs to her. And, the other Mandalorians, they seem good with it. So, yeah, you obviously get the Darksaber, which she's been longing for like as long as she's been in the show. She finally gets that. You see that cool closing shot of her standing there as the camera zooms in. And that was a pretty cool moment.
Yeah, I get the impression that we mentioned that the the final kind of story arc may be Bo-Katan versus Armorer because of the fact that Armorer sent her out to go find Mandalorians, but she didn't necessarily state who the leader would be. We're getting that now, where Bo-Katan now has her army back. She has the Darksaber, so technically she is the leader of the Mandalorians. And if the Armorer wants to join, she has no choice but to join Bo-Katan.
Yeah, that's true. She's got a lot of power now that she wields that Darksaber.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting power dynamic between the two of them. And then obviously there are all the rumors out there about the Armorer, and is she hiding something? Is she the villain of the season? Obviously, you got that big tease at the end of last episode where you see that Moff Gideon's been rescued from prison. So we've got 2 episodes left. We'll see where that goes and how that plot thread is tied up.
Exactly. There is one thing that ties into the show that was talked about at Star Wars Celebration, and I think a lot of fans, and including us, were questioning the direction of the show, and this confirms the headlining title. And I looked into it, and the producer does go into more detail, but Mandalorian producer confirms that Din Djarin is no longer the only main character. So we started the series off with Din and Grogu, and now they're introducing many more Mandalorian armies, and they're trying to rebuild their population. And it doesn't seem like Din is the main character anymore, and this confirms it basically.
Yeah, this has very much been the Bo-Katan season. Din, for a lot of the episodes, feels kind of like a side character. Even in this one, where they're doing their detective work, it felt like she was more the main character than he was. And you've got a lot of these episodes where the final shot is Bo. Like, most of these episodes have ended on something to do with her. So it's becoming increasingly clear with each passing episode that they are trying to pass the torch to Bo off of Din. Which, I mean, does bring me back to like why Grogu was brought back into the show, because we talked about this earlier in the season. It's, when we did still think this was a show that focused on Din and Grogu and their journey together, it's like we're looking for this reason why he was brought back. And now that the torch seems to be being passed to Bo and other Mandalorians, I'm really starting to question what Din and Grogu's purpose are as characters. And I mean, we'll see. The show is obviously going to go on for the foreseeable future. They announced that there's going to be a movie that I think Filoni's directing as well. At least he's writing it. So yeah, it's we'll see.
Yeah, he that was another thing that was mentioned at Celebration, that Filoni would be directing a New Republic movie, and that's basically all that was said. But in a conversation that he had with IGN after sitting down with Filoni and Favreau, he was asked if it would be a closing story arc to the Mandalorian. So is it like Mandalorian, finale? And he said no, but they following that, they talked about how the differences between live action episodic series and theatrical, and it basically negated that and basically said yes, it will be a finale because you have larger budgets, you're allowed to you can do more, so you can be the extra on screen in theatrical versus episodic. So that totally negated him saying no, because it basically means yes. We're allowed to go bigger and better. So yes.
Now, did they announce? They didn't announce a date or anything, so we don't have an ETA on that. We just know it's in development, right?
Yeah, and it kind of not that doesn't worry me, but kind of does at the same time, because if you actually look at the history of the movies that are announced, put into production, almost all of them over the last few 3, 4, 5 years have all been announced and then canceled. Um,
Yeah,
they've changed them constantly. There was a Patty Jenkins movie,
the
Rogue One. I think it was Rogue
Rogue
Squadron,
Squadron. Yeah,
canceled.
Taika Waititi's. Yeah, he was working on one too that got scrapped. I'm hoping these ones now that they have kind of canceled and reset on the the Disney Star Wars branding. I'm hoping there's a little bit more solidarity with these ones. Like you had James Mangold, who had another. He's doing a Star Wars movie as well. He was actually there to speak about it. So I feel like maybe there's a little bit more to this. Like I don't know. It's hard to get excited, like you said, when they keep announcing things and canceling them and pushing them back. And yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah, this announcement does seem a little bit more solid, especially with the fact that if you actually look at the movies announced, they actually each one take place in a different time period. So it's kind of like they're trying to fill in the gaps in different eras and at the same time introduce brand new eras. So they're going to continue. One of the movies is going to focus on 15 years after episode 9 with Ray. Uh, that one, yeah, it's gonna be 15 years after. Then the second movie will take place during the New Republic era, Dave Filoni directing. And then the third movie, for the very first time, we're actually going to be getting an Old Republic story, and it's supposed to be at the very earliest days of the Jedi. It's supposed to take place like I think it was 20. I think it was either 2000 or 20,000
I think it was like
years.
20, yeah,
Was it
20,000
20?
or something like that. I remember hearing that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that'll be interesting. I mean, I think I'm most if you're asking me which I'm most excited for, it's going to be that one. A, because James Mangold's a fantastic director, but B, because we're finally going to get something different that is so far removed from everything that we've seen in live action Star Wars before. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
yeah, absolutely. Before we get to that, we will be getting an Acolyte TV series coming out in 2024. They gave a little bit of a tease for that, just a few images. But that one there is before the Dawn of the Jedi in the Old Republic era. That's going to take place in the High Republic, which is the story, the book series that is currently running. That one is supposed to take place. I think it's 200. So like 170-ish years, 180 years before episode 1. And yeah, it's supposed to take place in an era where there are no Sith and it's just, hundreds of Jedis just running around. And the last thing that was well, obviously the biggest part of Star Wars Celebration was all the stuff happening with Ahsoka, because we got a teaser trailer, and we got to see what characters look like in live action, and we got to see Grand Admiral Thrawn live action for the first time in just a little snippet, and he most likely will tie in some way to the Mandalorian. Probably not. Maybe this season, I don't know. Maybe towards the end, because they also didn't really say whether Mandalorian season 3 will directly lead into Ahsoka or if it's taking place simultaneously.
I mean, at least based on what we've seen with Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, they have been keen on crossing over series, introducing. Well, I mean, we've had Ahsoka in uh, both of these shows at this point, so they're keen on connecting and crossing over series. So it'll be interesting to see when we get Ahsoka how much of the Mandalorian is going to bleed into that show, and how they're going to tie the two together, and if so, how much they're going to be really tied together.
Yeah. Really cool aspect to Star Wars that they are translating the actors from animated to live action.
Well, and yeah, they're using, I mean, when they do this, they're often using the same actors. So it is cool that they've got this loyalty to their voice actors and their longtime standing actors. Like you had, a few episodes ago, we had Ahmed Best who played Jar Jar coming back in a different role. So whether they're playing, the same role that they did in an animated movie, or they're being recast from older Star Wars content, it is nice to see that loyalty to their stars and their actors.
Yeah. They did say that on that note, the Acolyte series will have a Wookiee Jedi, and the actor playing the Wookiee will be the actor who played Chewbacca.
Oh, cool! I didn't know
Yeah.
that. That is cool.
Yeah. So yeah, the loyalty is there. It's a really cool aspect to the Star Wars universe that most production companies don't really have. All right, Ben. Thank you for joining me again, and have a great weekend.
Of
We'll see
course,
you
you too,
next week.
Stefano. All right, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Take care. Ciao.